All right, hello everybody. So this video goes over the final project for the course CMN2180C, Popular Culture and Communication in the Winter 2021 semester. So if you're enrolled in pop culture and communication right now in March and April 2021 at the University of Ottawa, this video is for you. Basically, what this video covers is how to turn your midterm proposal into your final project. So we're going to go through all of the guidelines. We're going to walk through a step-by-step, your recommended steps for turning the proposal into the final project before ending with some big tips and a little bit of additional information. This PowerPoint has also been posted online on our Brightspace page. All right, recommended steps. Big first step. Review your feedback. So we spent a lot of time reviewing your midterms, about an hour and a half to 2 hours per assignment. We provided the feedback on the content as well as the writing, so the substantive content and the writing that you did. Please review your feedback individually with your group, and then with myself, Cassidy, or Erica. We'll be happy to answer any questions that you have. So send me an email and set up a time for us to meet to talk about your feedback if we haven't done so already. Once you have reviewed your feedback, the next big thing that you need to do is review the project guidelines for the final project. So these can be found on Brightspace under the final project module. You really want to make sure that you understand all of the different components that you're asked to do for the assignment, and we're going to go through the guidelines together. And then I would strongly encourage you to use the guidelines as a checklist. Print a copy or save a copy to your computer and quite literally cross or highlight things off as you have done them. So let's go through the guidelines together. And I've just taken screenshots from the guidelines. So what you see on the screen in front of you should be word for word what is inside the assignment that's sitting on Brightspace. All right, general requirements: font size 12, Times New Roman, double spaced, normal margins, between 12 to 15 pages. That doesn't include your title page or bibliography. And so this kind of stuff you want to look for at the very end of the project. Once you've done your big edit, make sure that you have everything in the right font. Make sure that it's spaced correctly. Make sure that it's within the page length. Don't forget to submit it on time. Another big requirement, and your title, you should have a title page and a bibliography, and these do not count towards your total page count. A couple other words of advice here. If you are going to be over your page limit, once you have done a really good edit to ensure that your writing is clear and concise, you're still over that page limit, send me an email, let me know, and we can talk about that. Another great way to work with a page limit is to include, for example, some graphs or images under your results section, and then have an annex at the very end, okay? So there's lots of ways to work within a page limit. Editing is one way, using annexes is another, and I would recommend emailing me if you have any questions there. A big important tip: you will recognize some of the sections that you're being asked to do for the final project. They're the same in terms of the titles of the section. But you should not really be copying and pasting any content word for word from your research proposal. The proposal serves as a really good starting point for the final project, but to very few exceptions, nothing should appear in the exact same way. And that's because you've received feedback on a lot of things. So think about how you can incorporate your feedback, or if you disagree with some of the feedback that you've been provided, is there something missing in your writing that you can address so that you don't get the same comment again? The introduction. In your introduction section, you should introduce the general problem or area of interest. You should describe your project. What was it about? What did you do? And what was the big takeaway? You might have several big findings or conclusions. Give your reader an important one. What is the impact that your project has on the field of study? In addition, you want to explain the relevance of the topic that you chose. So The relevance is usually supported by some kind of independent information. It can be experiential, or you can look at media articles, you can include statistics, and many of you received comments about this in the proposal. I'd also like to draw your attention to the number of marks that this section is worth. And I would encourage you to pay attention as you're using the rubric or guidelines as a checklist to the number of marks that each section is worth. Your introduction is only worth 1 mark out of 30. So that gives you an idea of how long the section should be versus say another section that we're going to be looking at in just a moment that's worth 8 points. So that should give you an indication of not necessarily the importance, but the length, because every section is important. The next section is the literature review. This is a section that is worth 8 marks out of 30. So that is nearly a third of your marks that get allotted to your literature review. Now, a literature review is not the same thing as the annotated bibliography that you were asked to produce for the research proposal. So an annotated bibliography, if you remember, listed the sources one by one. A literature review is more like a story or an essay within an essay. If you think about your whole research project, like the paper that you're going to be producing for the final exam, as an essay, the literature review is a smaller essay inside of this bigger one. And it should flow like a story. We have looked at a lot of articles together this semester. The majority of them, if not all of them, have a literature review. One of my favorite articles that does a really great job presenting their lit review section is the selfie article that we looked at. They use headings to very clearly show the different themes that they're going to be talking about. And I would encourage you to do the same. In your literature review, you need to define your key concepts. That's bullet number 1. So on your list, cross that off once you've done it. That's key. Then you want to summarize at least 15 to 18 literature review items. At least 10 to 12 of those should be scholarly sources, and at least 5 cannot come from our class material. Although you guys have done a really good job on that, not all of our course material is going to be relevant for your project, right? So don't include stuff just to include. Think about your topic theme. And what you're really doing here is developing a story among the literature that exists, and you're going to link each item to the problem or research question that you're looking at. You still want to critique and analyze and synthesize the literature. And by the end of each section, if not the end of the entire lit review, it should be very clear what the problems are with the existing research, what issues are left unsolved, or what gaps kind of still remain, because this is where your specific research question is going to fit in. And that brings us to the next section, which is also only worth 1 mark. And this is the one exception to nothing should be cut and paste from your proposal. It's possible that your research question has stayed the same since the midterm. It's also possible that it's changed. So if your research question is identical, you can copy and paste that in. That's the one exception to that rule. Essentially, what this section should do is clearly identify your research question or questions, or perhaps explain any hypotheses or hypotheses and predictions that you're going to be making. You also want to make sure that it's clear what problem, issue, or gap your project aims to resolve. So I'd say include 1 or 2 sentences at the beginning of this section that does bullet point 2, and then state your question or hypothesis or both after that. Oh, it looks like we've missed the methodology section. So let me stop sharing this, and we're going to pop in to the guidelines and find the methodology section. 1 second here. All right, there's the methods. All right, so the next section, this section here that didn't make it into the PowerPoint, in this video. It's in the PowerPoint on Brightspace. This is your methodology section. Your methodology section in the final project is different than the methodology section that was in the proposal. The first way it's different is the language. So in the proposal, the methodology section is very future looking. We will do this, we plan on doing this. In the final project, you have done it. So your language needs to change. It needs to be, we did this instead of we plan on doing something. What you want to do in this section, and you'll notice that it's worth 5 marks. So it's actually worth more in the final project than it was worth in the midterm. So that gives you an idea about the length as well as the level of detail that should be in there. And it should be pretty precise. So you want to identify the methodology that you used in your final project. Describe what you did. So how did you collect your data? What was your sample or population? What kind of questions did you ask, or how did you analyze it? That's tied to the question piece. You want to justify the methodology that you chose, the data gathering methods that you used, and your actual specific research design. In order to earn full marks in this section, you do need to include some sources or citations to support not only how you design the project, but also why your method is the correct method to use. And we looked at this in our class. So there's a lot of different ways to study popular culture. And you can, depending on your question, you can use different methods. So that's the methodology section. And again, I'll update this PowerPoint for Brightspace. Once you've done the methodology section, the next section in your paper is the results. So this provides an overview of summary of the data that you collected, along with kind of a short introduction. You don't necessarily want to include all of the raw data that you collected, but you want to present your results in a way that is easy for your reader to understand. So I would recommend including data presented in tables, charts, graphs, or other figures, some kind of contextual analysis of that data, briefly explaining what it means. Data that corresponds to your central research questions should be in there, and maybe secondary findings. Whether you're doing a qualitative or quantitative project, you should still have a results section. And if you have questions about this, email me and we can talk about it in the context of your specific project. The discussion section, which is worth 5 marks. So again, pay attention to the number of marks that each section is worth, needs to explain and evaluate your results. So you want to think about, what do the results mean? What kind of patterns or relationships emerged? And you need to think about how your study fits into the existing literature. So does it confirm or support any existing findings? Does it refute or show that what's been done already is no longer valid? How does it further the topic that you're studying? And I would strongly encourage you to organize your discussion in a logical way. So maybe around themes, hypotheses, or your research questions. And this is a really great place to highlight things that were significant or that were unexpected. I would also encourage you to think about in this section what the results can't tell us, and maybe what kind of limitations that you encountered that impact the results. The last big section of your research project is your conclusion, but note that it's only worth 2 marks. So now that you've completed the project, because the conclusion should be one of the last things that you do, wrap it up. Reiterate your research questions, summarize your discussion in 1 or 2 sentences, maybe a paragraph max. Explain whether your question was answered and how it was answered, whether your predictions were correct and why they were or were not, and discuss the implications of your project. So always think about and keep in mind, why does it matter? Why should someone be reading your paper? And the answer isn't just because that, it's a final exam for a class and therefore someone has to read it. You want to think about the importance or significance of your project, not only within our class, but outside of our course content. So those are the different sections of the assignment that you need to complete. In addition, you also get marks for references. So 1 mark, just 1 mark, to ensure that all of your references are identified in the text and that are in the same format in your bibliography. Organization and writing is worth 3 marks, and presentation, which is essentially putting it in on time or submitting your assignment on time and putting in all of the required sections, 1 mark. So those are the different components. Now, where do you need to start? The best place to start this project is to finish off the literature review section first. You need to go to the library, you need to pull extra resources because you need to have, if we go back to the requirements here, for your literature review, you need to have 15 to 18 literature items. So this section is going to take quite a bit of work. So I would recommend starting with your lit review section. Start with the sources that you pulled for the proposal, supplement them by adding in additional information and readings, and then organize this section into themes and write. And a big important tip is to remember to identify and define your key concepts, because those should be present in your research question and your data collection. So step number 1, once you're done your lit review, refine your research questions if you need to, and clearly state your hypothesis or your predictions. Then do your methodology. So finalize your methodology, make sure that your entire team is on your same page, and then actually carry out your study. And if your notes from the process of developing it vary from the process of actually carrying it out, make any adjustments, but you should be able to type this section almost as you go and then go back to it afterwards and just make it clearer and more academic. So you can literally write down the steps that you took and then explain that in clearer writing. And don't forget to use resources from the library to supplement this information to help justify this. But you want to finalize, implement, and collect your data. That would be the next step. Once you've done that, you analyze the data and state your results. Super simple. Discussion section. Explain why the results matter. So connect them to existing research from your literature review section. Almost near the end, write your introduction, write your conclusion. So explain the relevance of the topic that you studied and briefly introduce your study and findings. And now that you've finished the project, this should be fairly easy to do. In the conclusion, it's the same thing, but at the end. So wrap everything up and link it to future research. Include your bibliography. So make sure that all of your sources are there. Make sure that they're all in the same format. Other tips. There's a lot of them. Use the guidelines as a checklist. So again, these slides provide an overview of what needs to get done for the final. Print out the guidelines, save them as a PDF, check and cross things off. Big tip number 2, start early. I really cannot say this one enough. The earlier you start working on this project, the easier it will be to complete. If you save it all for a day or 2 before the final, you're going to run out of time, and or it's just not going to be very good because you won't have enough time to do the things that you need to do. So start early, start right now. Save time for proofreading and editing. Those are 3 easy marks to earn. Make sure that your paper has one voice, even if it's been written by different people in different sections. Have someone who's responsible for going through that at the end, if not 2 people. Communicate with your group regularly. So set your goals, be specific, be accountable to each other, and be honest. I would start setting timelines now and check in on a regular basis. The importance of checking in is it forces you to be accountable. So I do this in my own work when I'm working with other people. I let them know if I'm falling behind and I adjust my my timelines accordingly. And I ask for help when I need it. Don't cheat. Plagiarism is a big no-no in all classes at the university, and it has serious consequences. So don't do it. Stay in touch with your team, But stay in touch with me. I am here to help you guys. If you need anything, please send me an email and let me know. Submit your assignment on time. The deadline is Sunday, April 25th at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's Ottawa time. Additional office hours. I've also set up additional office hours on Zoom. So you can find me on a regular basis without an appointment on Zoom during the exam period. I've got 6 different sessions scheduled. You can see them here: Thursday, April 8th, Wednesday, April 14th, Friday, April 16th, Monday, April 19th, Wednesday, April 21st, and Thursday, April 22nd. The times vary, but all of the links for these office hours are on Brightspace. So just go into Zoom, click Start Meeting or Join Meeting, and you'll be able to hop into office hours. If these times do not work for you, send me an email. We can set up a time by appointment that does. And I would ask in your email that you suggest a few times, just so that I can fit them into my schedule rather than having a back and forth trying to find the time. So those are the big tips for the final project. Again, I would say get started right now. As soon as you watch this video, look at the feedback if you haven't done that yet, or reach out to your team and reach out to me. I'm looking forward to reading your projects. All of your proposals were very interesting, but again, having enough time to do it is definitely key to doing well in this class. Thanks for listening, and I'm sure I'll be seeing some of you during office hours very soon.